What's up, ballers? I'm Cole, and welcome to Variety Speak, a show we'll be dropping from time to time outside our regular Friday and Sunday schedule, whenever Jacob or I just want to talk about a random topic for 10 odd minutes. So, like many of us, I was looking at the current conference standings, lamenting the fact that the season is still over a month from returning, and it got me thinking about a narrative that's been circulating. That is the narrative of how the Eastern Conference has sort of flipped the script on the West, or at least has now corrected the previous decade plus of imbalance during which the West dominated the NBA with teams like the Lakers, Spurs, Mavs, Warriors, etc. And, well, I just don't agree with that narrative at all. Actually, I felt like this was shaping up to be one of the most competitive Western Conference we've had in a long while. And that's ignoring the fact that the Blazers and Warriors were essentially taking a year-long sabbatical to recover from ravaged rosters they had incurred on their deep playoff runs from the previous few seasons, and the many promising Western teams on the come-up like the Pelicans, Grizzlies, Kings, Mavs, and dare I say, the Suns. So even though we know that the West is not as strong as it could have been this year, and will likely be even stronger in the coming years, I still feel that the current 1-8 of the Western Conference is dummy good. I'll start with a quick tangent on the Houston Rockets, because I think their season has been kind of hilarious with the amount of shifting goalposts I see in the media. I think people tend to disrespect the Rockets heavily since they are the 6th seed, even though they are 3 games out of the 3 seed, which is coincidentally the same number of games that Portland, New Orleans, and Sacramento trail the 8th-seeded Grizzlies by. But I don't think that the Rockets helped themselves much by making a controversial trade to go all in on PJ Tucker as their 5 and really committing to a small ball like has never been done before by trading away their only real center in Clint Capella. But as a lifelong Warriors fan, I can tell people firsthand just how scary it was to have Houston nipping at our heels during the Durant era. Like, I didn't think we would lose to the Rockets going into any of the series, but they had a way of making one of the most unfair rosters ever assembled sweat hard when it really seemed like that should have been impossible. Suffice it to say, the people who feel the fear of losing to another team are in a fairly privileged position to appraise their potential impact on the league moving forward. I also want to give a quick shout out to the CP3 Westbrook trade. I think the majority of people got it wrong when they said that it would be a bad fit between Harden and Westbrook, myself included. Which is pretty funny in hindsight when we now see that Russ should have always been playing on a team surrounded by shooters to get the most out of his freakish athleticism, motor, and ball-dominant passing playstyle. People might argue that Harden's overall stats have slightly diminished since Westbrook showed up, but Harden's statistical dominance ticking up or down a few notches seems inconsequential when you consider how much Westbrook has helped Harden carry the load of this team when he hits the offensive slumps that typically occur in the grind of an NBA season. Not to mention the fact that historically, all great players have let their stats take a backseat to winning once they buy into a good system with players and pieces that fit around them. You can look as recently as Steve Kerr showing up and Steph Curry's overall stats going down being the start of Curry's 2-year MVP dominance in the Warriors dynasty. Or you can go as far back as Wilt winning his lone championship by foregoing his statistical absurdity in favor of buying into a winning culture, coach, and system. It's also funny to think of how good CP3 and Harden actually were together when CP3's playstyle is so antithetical to the D'Antoni system which gave birth to the Harden stat spectacle. But I digress. The Rockets are really, really good, and I'm not sure why people have backed off this. Moving on to a team that is not seeded 6th, the Nuggets are also a team that people just like to pretend don't exist. Like, oh, they'll probably just be beat by one of the LA teams, or Houston, right? Well, I mean, maybe, but that is a really reductive and disrespectful take on one of the deepest, deadliest rosters in the NBA. My personal hot take is that the Nuggets will win the championship this year, but I know most people don't agree with that, except maybe Denver fans. So let me just explain why they're at least not a team to sleep on. Now that the Nuggets have sniffed the playoffs and gotten some experience in 2019, losing in one of the best playoff series of all time to the Blazers last year, seriously, if you missed any games of this series, you are doing yourself a disservice. It is some of the best basketball I have ever watched between two teams I was 100% certain would not win the championship. Their player timelines are just right to push for championships starting this year. Looking at the ages on the roster, we have Jokic at 25, Murray at 23, Harris at 25, Morris at 24, and one of the more underrated players on the team in Jeremy Grant at 26. All of these players are entering what should be the primes of their careers, with the likely exception of Gary Harris, who has been regressing for 2 years. Luckily, the weight is not all on their shoulders. Michael Porter Jr., who is just 21 years old and who should be getting playoff minutes this year, is a versatile offensive wing who can score at will from anywhere. But it will be his defense that will be the key to cracking the rotation and getting big minutes if Malone's tact of sending away Malik Beasley in favor of Gary Harris, trading a superior offensive player for a superior defensive player, is anything to go by. The Nuggets also have a bevy of veterans who are constantly undervalued by NBA fans. Will Barton, Paul Millsap, and Mason Plumlee anchor this team's depth as a trio of 3 of the better role players in the NBA, if role-playing trios exist. Don't even get me started on Torrey Craig, who everyone seems to hate just because he played in the Australian League before coming to the NBA. His value as an on-ball defender is vital for this team. Anyway, I digress again. This is also a really, really good team. Now for the Jazz, who people don't really know how to rate because of their volatile on-court product. When this team is playing its best basketball, they look unstoppable. Their current starting 5 of Bogdanovic, Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, and either Royce O'Neal or Joe Ingles is a tough out for any team, given that all the players play to the preseason potential we saw them reaching. And frankly, if they do reach that potential, are one of the most talent-rich starting 5s in the whole league. Now, I think the success of this team hinges on the ability of Rudy Gobert to play elite defense deep into the playoffs. I see Gobert as a sort of last stand for traditional bigs in the league. The whole Jazz defense orbits around Gobert, and they basically step up on the perimeter and let the ball handler pick their poison of contested threes or taking their chances with the 7-1 stifled tower. At least that's how it's normally supposed to work. A lot has been made about how effective Gobert can be deep in the playoffs when offenses can get whatever switches they want and superstar guards like Harden, CP, and Steph can dance all over him. Though it remains to be seen how deeply into the playoffs Gobert can push his defensive prowess, the Jazz being a 4 seed definitely shows that despite all of the turmoil they've gone through this season, any team will find their hands full playing against a Jazz team firing on all cylinders. Now, the Thunder, Mavs, and Grizzlies are all very good teams in their own right, but by virtue of being too young or not talented enough, I don't think many people see them as serious title contenders. As stated earlier, Portland and Golden State have basically taken a flyer on this year, though with recent rumors involving a play-in tournament, a healthy Blazers team could certainly make a splash in the playoffs. So we expect those teams to return to form next year and push to repeat their playoff success. In other words, the West has a 6th seed in the Rockets, which pushed Golden State in its prime to their limits and is about to get better. By the way, every team in the West is over 500 save for the Grizzlies, who sits at 32 and 33. This despite the Western Conference having a significantly deeper conference than the East, the teams outside of the playoffs being the Pelicans, Blazers, Kings, and Spurs compared to the East's Wizards, Hornets, Bulls, and Knicks. The reason I bring up the conference depth in a discussion of overall strength is because a deeper conference means teams have a tougher time getting good records, and they do it anyway. The first team in the Eastern Conference standings that boasts a record over 500 is the Philadelphia 76ers. And so Sixers fans don't get mad at me, I will concede they had an injury-riddled, drama-rife season that would have been tough for any team to overcome. I will also mention that it is very funny that they are the 6th seed and the Sixers. I just think it is. However, now is the time in the video where I have to wonder if the Sixers would have even made the playoffs in the West. I know that sounds crazy, but they're only 7 games ahead of the Grizzlies in record, and the significantly tougher schedule compounded with the other factors that led to Philadelphia having a disappointing season, including the lack of fit with Al Horford, lack of shooting, loss of depth in the offseason, would have made an already tight playoff race in the West even more competitive. I definitely don't think it's a sure thing that they missed the playoffs in the West, but I don't have to do that many mental gymnastics to get there either. This is all to say that I'm really bummed that the Suns have to miss the playoffs for the whole next decade because they aren't in the East. But I, for the last time, digress. Oh yeah, there's also these two LA teams in the West, but I don't think anyone expects much from them, so